Maeya TV. Welcome back. I'm Jessica Haru, and I'm here with
Patrick Stednitz.
Patrick. Thank you so much for coming on Maeya TV. Now, you describe yourself as a literary philanthropist. What is that?
Well, when I was about 10 years old, a teacher told me that I had college level language skills. And so I was wondering, well, what am I going to do with that? But when I started coordinating different types of charity events at actually since 9 years old, and I didn't think that, having college level English skills was something I could use for that. But over the past couple of decades, I've realized that there is actually a lot I can do with that. And, while my father revolutionized the medical field with his inventions, I decided that, as they say, the pen is mightier than the sword. While some people being injured were held back together until healing by my father's, devices, I could actually prevent, certain types of injuries with the types of philosophical books, allow people to live a healthier and more meaningful life. And one way that a person can do that for others is actually being more involved in charity. So I'd say my first encounter was, say, 9 years old, and I saw a television commercial about harp seals being clubbed in the Arctic for their furs. And so I didn't understand the meaning of the message back then, where it was just send money and certain people can take care of it for you. Okay, you're basically helping to fund the volunteers, equipment, and maybe chartering a boat or what they need to do to go out and accomplish their mission. So I was trying to put together a mission of my own, okay, because like I said, I totally missed the idea. And so I went to the school and I got together my friends and I said, all right, well, this is what's happening in the Arctic. We need to put a stop to it. And, I know that some of us have boats, okay? I'm trying to figure out which one has the biggest boat. We're gonna need to fill it full of supplies, not to mention food. And then, of course, as many of us as we can. And I said, well, I know my dad has a gun that he goes hunting with. I hope we don't have to use it. And so I thought all these things, But then I realized that, of course, as I got older, and not too much older, it was probably about a year later when I got together with my friends again and said, okay, after your input, I put together a larger plan. And I said, I've already talked to someone down in the marina to charter a boat that is bigger than the ones we already have, that'll get us all the way to the Arctic. And so when it came time, it was somebody down at the pier that said, oh, well, you don't actually have to go do this your own. You could, just send them money. So then my mission suddenly changed, sort of. A lot of people's mission is as they can, for their own purposes. So that's where I can relate to people. That now my goal also is to make much money as I can, okay? However, it's not for me, it's for others. And so there's a similarity but difference there, as you can see. And that's why there's people like me that are philanthropists, and there's other people that are doing other things with their money. And I've just been kind of doing that ever since.
So how do you help people with your writing?
Yes. So with the writing, okay, I noticed that if you're able to, say, send a letter, okay, to someone in the Arctic instead of actually going there, okay, then you can do it in such a way as the way leaders normally address their congregation, okay? by trying to talk them out of, say, a violent encounter, okay? And and you see this in movies a lot, you know who the leader is because they'll get up on their pedestal so everybody can see them, and I don't know, it could be a rock or a log or what have you, and they speak to the group and encourage them to do one thing or another, whatever is that is the goal of the person speaking. So I don't actually have to jump up on a log and use my voice. I could actually just sit down in my chair at home and, well, it used to be a pen and typewriter, and now I just use my computer. So, and with that, I'm able to write up content that is used by charity organizations. Most recently, updating the content on a web page that represents one of my charity groups that I'm a member of. And also, there's self-help books, as you know, and trying to reach people through a common goal. It could be your own mission, and giving people the information they need to understand what's happening and what drives you to your mission. And before you know it, you have, who knows how many people are joining your cause just because they read your book. And so that's part of how I've been using writing to help the world, and not with certain inventions like my father did.
So your work has been published in several journals and magazines here in our local South Bay.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of topics are you writing about?
Well, there was, before I got more involved in these different charity groups, I had written for, say, an online periodical called Palos Verdes Pulse. And I wanted to appeal to some of the flora and fauna that exists here on the peninsula so people can appreciate it more. And then one way after appreciation to help out is when I recently gathered with the Rotary Club at White Point, kind of the border of Rancho Palos Verdes and San Pedro. There's a conservancy there, and I was helping to restore some local flora to attract and maintain some of the fauna on the peninsula. And because it was around this time, Easter, that I appealed to the rabbits that live here. And so I wrote as much of an endearing piece of content so that people can understand why they are worthy of living here on a thriving basis. And so that's one way I've done that. And also the Palos Verdes magazine also asked me to write some material for them. And most of what I do is ghostwriting, to where the book doesn't have my name on it, has someone else's name on it. And so I'm absent from the picture like a ghost. That's what I call it, ghostwriting. And so it's a great deal because if that person, has a more popular name than mine, then more people will read it. And so that's why I sometimes will engage in that style of writing.
Now you're very involved in a lot of community organizations in this area. What needs do you think the South Bay and the Palos Verdes area has?
Mm-hmm. Well, I spend most of my time here in the Palos Verdes part of South Bay, and I just came from my Kiwanis Club meeting, and my being president of the club here in Palos Verdes, and hearing all the concerns of the other members, I've gotten actually a lot of news. Today in particular, as less than an hour ago, I got a lot of news as to what they've been able to dig up as concerns here in the local region on mostly here on the Hill, okay? on what needs to be done. So part of that is how many schools need scholarships, okay? How much money can we put aside for those scholarships? And about a week and a half, we're gonna have our place at the Whale of a Day event in the Point Vicente Interpretive Center. So we're going to make certain provisions that my members have discovered, have holes that need to be filled by our funds. And some brochures are going to be given out so that people know that we're there to help. And so this is why it's an ongoing basis, for finding out what needs to be done and then doing it. So it's just a continuous cycle, and I'm proud to be part of it.
Yeah, as a current president of the Kiwanis, what has your main focus been?
Well, my focus is on, and we do these votes during the meeting, to find out on whose matters to address first. And so it's really eye-opening to find out how many concerns are out there, and that's what we have to prioritize, and that's the difficult part. There's the appeal to the humanity, and as opposed to, say, more material concerns, like filling potholes in the road, or Kiwanis, we just deal with the youth. The road would be more like the type that would fill potholes, okay? And then there's my being a member of the Lions Club, where we just, we have basically parties, and the money we pay to be at the party, goes to the charity, and that's where some of the free eyeglasses come from that you see. That's from the Lions Club. So, but with Kiwanis, I know a bit more about what's going on there because they made me the president, and so it's actually a daily thing for me to reach out to different organizations, volunteers, advertise to the public, that this is what we're doing, and it's it's pretty involved, and there's such a motley crew of that really come out of it. So I've gotten a few hours of sleep in the past few days, just trying to make it even a small dent and some of the needs that need to be addressed. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know that you're especially focused on education, because that's what you're getting your PhD in, special education.
Sure.
Could you tell us why that cause is so important to you?
Well, it is, yes. A lot of people wonder why I don't actually have a name on my own book. And while I've authored, articles in smaller sources of literature, I don't actually have a full novel or maybe a textbook, you'd see at some of the colleges. And that's because I have written it, but I'm waiting until I finish my PhD before I publish, okay? And that is in special education, because my dissertation is about, having discovered, partially through having about a half a dozen degrees myself, okay, is that I met a lot of people, okay, that have certain skills that other people don't have, okay, and not a lot of people know how to find these underrated, highly skilled individuals, okay. If you ever seen the movie Rain Man, then you know what I'm talking about. All right, this guy's brother took his sibling who had autism, the idiot savant level, and these are the kind of people that can, tell you all of the numbers of the value of pi, 3.14, and hundreds of other digits afterward, or be able to assemble a Rubik's Cube, before anybody else. And being able to identify say the license plates at a crime scene where everybody else is going to forget, So, and I've noticed that people are typically happy in positions where they're really good at it, right? So if you can actually give a job to someone who has autism, say with the FBI, okay, because the FBI needs these kind of skills, right? So if they're happy with that kind of work, all right, and they're more likely going to because they're good at it, then that's a niche that should be filled. But where do you find these people, right? And so I found out how to get a hold of them, okay, how to present the opportunity, okay, in a way that is appealing to them. And that's part of what the dissertation is about, is determining that how much society needs them and how much it's going to benefit everybody. People that don't have autism and the people who do have autism, everybody's going to benefit from this, because society really thrives when you have a lot of different people that are functioning at their best. So.
Now, are there any events, particular causes that you're working on that people could get involved in?
Sure. So that's part of what, coincidentally, just today, a new batch of brochures were made, okay? And that is just basically to provide the opportunity for locals to get involved. It's an international, and I don't know what the they're all international clubs that I'm with, except for the food bank, okay? And so the brochure allows locals to help with their part, of how they're going to benefit society with their efforts, because we no longer need to go to Africa, for example, okay, to help them, because they have their own, say Kiwanis Club, they have their own Kiwanis Club, we have our Kiwanis Club here, and so these brochures allow people to get involved, let them know what's happening and how they can help. And sometimes it makes a big difference if all they do is sit into one of our meetings and help us vote, okay, for how we're going to proceed with some of the local strategies. Is actually, you'd be surprised how beneficial.
Is anyone able to attend these meetings?
Oh yes. They well, we like them to be adults, okay, but I know somebody who's 19 years old, okay, and has a form of autism that's within the superior intellect range, and I've been letting her parents know that she could benefit from this because we provide, skills that she's going to need for college or even a job, that doesn't involve college, okay, like management skills and community service, because a lot of people don't realize that you can't just get into UCLA as a student anymore with an A average. You can have all A's and it's still going to be very challenging, okay, to get accepted. All right, so what you want to do is you want to have as many A's as you can, plus other skills to put in your resume, and community service is one of those. And dealing with these charity clubs like Kiwanis is a really good way to get your foot in the door to not just UCLA, but actually, jobs where you want to work. There are actual volunteer positions that require you to have this kind of experience already, okay, because they have so many people lining up to volunteer, they can't accept them all, so they choose the best of the best, and so that's one way to do it. So yes, I would say that you're right on the money with that line of reasoning.
And then if anyone wanted to reach out to you,
Mhm.
where could they find you?
Well, fortunately, it's a bit easier, on Facebook than you might think, because last I checked, I was the only Patrick Stednitz in the world, and type my name in. When I'm helping other people find me on Facebook, I'll type my name in, and so you can send me a friend request, or I could just text them, or they say my name. I say this, that's how you get a hold of me, and my my full name will usually come up after typing just about 6 or 8 characters. So Patrick Stednitz, last name spelled Stednitz, or as we did when I was in the military, Sierra Tango Echo Delta November India Tango Zulu.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, viewers, for watching. Come back next week. We're going to have a lot more interviews throughout the month. Thank you so much for being here with us. Bye.